The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show.
Welcome back to It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show. And we're back with Al Tallman and the continuing story of his life in show business, on stages, on convention areas, on movies, movies, and you name it. The guy's been all over the place, and I'm so glad to have him here. I've known him, like we said, for 45 years. And we're coming to you from Elvis Presley's dressing room here in the International Showroom at the Westgate Resort, Las Vegas. And we're going to keep on going. So, Al, let's talk about your time with Cinema Services, because you did a lot of work with Cinema Services.
Yeah. I started out with, I was working with Chuck DeKemper, and he was really not feeling well. He was sick, and he had to do a job with Bill Brennan at the Country Club. It was a dance hall on the Strip at the time. And I said, Chuck, just go home. I'll go in and I'll report as you, and we'll put you on the clock, and I'll cover you today. And it was with Bill Brennan, and I went in, and they didn't really have a dimmer rack, but they had lights all set up in different colors, and a small thing that they could change color with. But we ended up having to patch and unpatch the lights, and Tom Vanozzi was one of the cameramen, and there were several camera people who I worked with when I was doing HBO and Univision and Telemundo fights. And Tom Vanozzi's dancing with this chick with a camera on his shoulder and just getting some really great stuff. It was fun. And we had free drinks, which was great for me. You know, just go to the bar, let you have a beer, and while you were working. And we pulled that off, and it went really well. And Billy was really pleased with what I'd done and covered. So he told him to hire me for other jobs, and that's how I got started with cinema. I started going out and doing.
What year?
That's a good one. It was early. It was like 82 or 83.
Okay.
You know.
So anyway, it was before the strike, the 84 strike?
Oh, yeah. It was before the strike. Anyway, so from then I'd go do a lot of shows for him. I'd go on the road for him, or I'd have to build things for him, put things together. And they took me and they offered me, I got full-time job offers with cinema 3 times over the 30 years of it, 35 years when we were working, and I was real busy. And but I didn't want to be tied to one place. I liked going and doing movies and different industrial shows, and I liked going work in the scene shops. And but Billy told him hire me, and Jimmy brought me in, and he said, "Well, what did you make last year?" And I told him what I made. He said, "Well, we'll up at $10,000, you know." And but I'd be married to the place. It was 24/7, and I told him how much I appreciated the offer, and I said, what I will do is before I accept anything else, I'll see what you guys have got going, and I'll cover it. And he said, okay. They'd offered me the job. They did that 3 times, and about that, in 25 or 30 years of that relationship, offered me full-time jobs. But the last full-time job I had was the Hilton, and that was 1980 when I left, when they came in with a production show, Starlight Express or whatever that first one was, I can't remember.
Was that Moulin Rouge?
Moulin Rouge, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that was in the 80, what was that, 84, 5, somewhere in there?
No, it was, when they were coming in, it was 80 that I left, so it was a show coming in 80, you know.
Okay.
It was the last time I worked, and I was a full-time spot operator here at that time. But anyway, but I got really good shows, and I got good efficiency reports from the clients, and the clients looking for me to do another show, and it's because I had the great people working around me to get things done. You know, I couldn't have done none of that myself. Just assigning work, and if there are many times there were environments where I wasn't the key to getting that job done, but I knew who was, and I put them there, and I was in that position, and they knew that I was in that position. I like to have I never felt bad about having good people around me. I always wanted the best people around me because they make you all look good.
Oh yeah.
Now they get the job done, and they're going to get it done right, and that attitude's what got me where I was. And like I said, I never had to worry about work. In fact, I torqued off a lot of people in this local because how did he get that job? How did he get all these jobs, especially film? And I loved working on film, grip or electric, whichever way I went. And in fact, that time that Ron Michel came out and slugged me, I told you.
Really?
that
All right. Tell me this one.
I had
Yeah.
I got a call from Gary Beard in L.A. He's a grip I worked with on several movies, and he was always there for the R&R advertising American Way to Play Vegas commercials that we shoot every year. And his brother as well, and he had an uncle. Well, they were doing Honey, I Blew Up the Baby, and they offered me the job, and I said, I'd love to do the job. And he said, well, we're not sure how it works with the union, but it's going to be union. And I said, well, let them know you're coming. And I said, they'll set up a room at the hall, and they'll let you interview your key people that you want to hire, your grips, your electrics, your wardrobe, makeup, whatever. We've got those people here, and they'll let you talk to those people and look at their resumes. And they said, okay. And I never said a word to Moran when I just went down to let him know I was going to work the movie, and he started screaming at me, you're not working this movie, you're done, like this. Really obnoxiously out of line with me. And I said, Jesus, bullshit. So I said, I'm going to go, what I'll do is I'll just go to the NLRB and file charges against him. So I got a form letter of request, like they would use for PRG or our industrial contract. Mm-hmm. And I took it to the hall and I filled it all out, and I was going to stamp it in, and I walked in the hall and he's standing there. He said, what are you doing? What do you want? And I said, Ron, I don't expect you to honor this. I'm sure you won't, but I said, I'm going to stamp it in. And I said, I'm going to file charges with the NLRB against you. And he came charging across the hall and he punched me. Kind of caught my shirt and ripped it too. Well, I'm not the greatest fighter in the world, but geez, I worked every major fight in Vegas for 35 years, ringside, every one of them. And he's a big guy. He's bigger than me, so I just went in. I got inside where he couldn't use those arms, punched him in the gut. And then I got him against the wall, and the girls are all screaming. Little Jack Tripp sitting over at the desk. And I reached over and clipped him right in the mouth and knocked his teeth out and cut my fist, and he shoved me down the hall. And he said, you ready to keep going? I said, Ron, we look like a couple of water buffalo fighting over space in the Sharon Getty in a mud hole. I said, neither of us are spring chicken, but if you want to keep going, I'm going for it. And his mouth is bleeding because I punched him in the mouth. He goes in the bathroom, washing his mouth up. And I looked at the girls, and I said, what do you think? And they said, you better go start your rabies shots. I'd never seen him like that. And I said, Jack, you're the only guy in here. Why didn't you break that up? And he said, with you big guys? It was all funny. Anyway, and so Ron goes, and I came in behind him. I said, I got to get in there. He said, I cut your mouth too. I said, no, I opened my fist up on your teeth. But then, of course, a month later, we were at somebody's funeral, and we were shaking hands, kind of laughing it off.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Well, guys do that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Guys, once the fight's over and done, they'll go, okay, that was a good one. We're done.
Stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what it is in our
But
DNA that does that. But
it didn't come out too bad.
no, that's just funny though.
Yeah.
So cinema, man, that was a really good place for you to be.
Oh yeah, it was an extremely good place to be. I get to travel with, Jimmy Brennan would show up. We'd do like a show up in San Francisco or someplace, and the Brennans were all like this. When you're on the road and you're on their crew, they take you out for one. They pay you well, but they take you out for one good meal, the best restaurant. And of course, when we were up, I was doing one in San Francisco. Timmy was still in college at the time, and we saw Timmy, and Jim took the whole crew out for steak and lobster or whatever we wanted. And Billy do the same thing. We were up doing the Goodwill games in Seattle, and he took us to the nicest restaurant right on Lake Union there, and you guys order anything you want. That was a funny one. Dave Kirkham was the son of the owners of Musco Light, and Billy'd use a lot of Musco Lights in different environments where he could, outdoor fights and stuff like that. He'd put Musco Lights up on a tower with a camera, Anyway, we took the whole Musco crew, which is about 10 guys, and then we had about Kenny Brown. We had about 6 guys from cinema up there with Billy, And we all ordered what we want, and then he turned to Kirkham and he said, "Well, David, it's your turn." David said, "My turn?" "Yeah." He said, "I did it the last time. It's your turn to pick up the tab on the company." He said, "I use the company card. You can use your company card and make him do it." I laughed till I cried when I heard that one. And then, of course, we're up there and they're doing Seafair. And we're all, we had a great day and we're all kind of partying. It's night. We're all daytime stuff. And they have the Seafair parade. It's a big deal up there in the tower, the Seattle Tower there. And they hung a medal on it. And that needs light, Billy says. I said, "Yeah, they should have lit it." He said, "Go down in the truck and get me one of those HMI PARs and get a narrow lens." So I went up and got it, and we hooked it all up and put it on our balcony, and we hit that thing and popped it, and it was beautiful. In fact, it was so good and so nice, we decided to pop it with another one. So I went down and got another one. We popped it, and it lasted about 5 minutes before it knocked all the power out on that floor. Everything went black. People came up, and they weren't going to come in. He'd ordered all this food, and they had shrimp and all kinds of hors d'oeuvres, pizza pie, whatever, cheeses. And that guy wouldn't come into the room because it was loud in there. And he said, the next day I got up and you'd expect there to be something. He said everything was gone. Dark as it was, everybody found all that food I had in that place. Oh, we got it. Anyway, just a dumb little story I had on the side. Another one, he took us all to see the Seattle Seahawks, or not the Seahawks, but the baseball team, Mariners. And we're in the big dome up there, and the dome got condemned, but it was before they condemned it. I remember a tile falling out of the ceiling and floating down, and saw a home run go right over our heads. It was a great one to go see. But when we got out, it was all the Musco Light crew and our crew, and he said, "Where you guys want to go? A beer bar, a wine bar, or a whiskey bar?" It's at the whiskey bar. So there's two big Ford wagons, station wagon. I got to turn that off. Sorry, but I'll talk to you later. Anyway, sorry I didn't turn that off.
Oh, it's okay.
Anyway,
This is live shows, man.
we go to the whiskey bar, and we got pretty well done in, and we get the cab drivers wait, and the cab drivers take us we get almost back to the hotel. We're staying in a place called the Executive Inn, it's right across from the Space Tower. And we're looking at this bar still open. He said, "Hey, we got to stop at one more bar before we get back there." We got him to stop, and we go in there, and it's a gay bar. And the guy said, "Well, I can't serve you guys because it's too late." Mm-hmm. And Billy looks at him and he said, "These guys are prejudiced. They won't serve us because we're gay." And I said, "That's right." And I got one of the Musco Light guys on my shoulders, and he got a guy, and we're charging each other. And the guy, "Oh, okay, I'll serve you one." We ordered two. And a couple of beer, we switched, and we go out, and the cab drivers are gone. He'd paid them off, and we got to walk 2 blocks back to the hotel. But just a little side story that was the fun you could have.
See, the business is, and what you're listening to is, it's a lot of work. It's hard work. It's demanding, but there's a lot of good times too. And you can find a way to have the best time in the craziest town, whatever. You'll find a way to make the best of it. And
Billy had his pilot's license to pilot on the ocean. So I remember we all kicked in $50 a piece, and we rented a 40-foot sloop, and we're out on the Puget Sound, and I got to sail around and do a lot of things, the fun that we would have with that, and then Kenny Brown and I were working the Tacoma Dome. It's a big, huge arena, and all the gymnastics was going on there, and we put up these they were good 60-foot long truss, and they were up about 35 feet, and we had a lot of HMIs that we were using, and we were setting them up. And the guy from Musco, those Muscos you can run from the ground. They've got the Musco lights have a remote, and you can adjust and focus from the ground, and that's usually what they would do. But we're up there in a Condor, and Kenny Brown's walking the truss. He's 35 feet in the air. That's a long way up to be walking that 20-foot orange box truss. and I got the Muscolite and the Condor with me, and I could see he's white-knuckled. He doesn't like being up there. And Kenny Brown can see that too. And he's walking towards me, and he gets right where we are, and he goes, whoa, and he drops through to the bottom part of the truss. Oh, the guy next to me says, take me down right now. And I said, Kenny, you asshole. He did that on purpose, you know. Kenny was fun to be with, though. He's always doing, he's a character. I did a lot of shows with him. You know, anyway.
Did during your career of doing the show, cinema and all that stuff, do you remember anybody ever getting seriously injured on any of your shows and stuff like that? I mean, people are going to get a cut. They're going to get,
broken arms, broken fingers.
Something simple.
Yeah.
I call that something simple because what can happen to us when we're doing our business, that's a simple,
Mostly
that's a simple
unloading
repair.
and loading trucks. I saw
Yes.
people get hurt. Broken arms, broken hands, severed fingers. We were lucky enough to never see anybody take a bad fall. Kenny Brown went over in a single man lift of Cabizons at the Hilton, in the Hilton Center, and that really messed him up. He was at 25 feet to that ceiling, I think, and
Something, yeah, about 25, yeah.
and he went all the way over, and I went to see him in the hospital, and he said, "Don't make me laugh." I what? Just don't make me laugh. I said, okay. He said, can you hand me that button right there in the hand? I said, what is that? He said, morphine. He'd broken his neck, but he was all right. It got him back together. And then Barbara Brennan came in, and they said, well, it's only going to be family. And she said, I'm his ex-wife. How's that? They go on in there, see him when he's in the hospital. Then he broke it a second time. He was taking his boat out, and thank God Ron Garrity was with him. He fell off the boat and broke his neck. He'd have drowned, but Garrity got him out. And
Wow.
Got him where he could get fixed up. But other than that, I've seen people with trucks bang off fingers, break hands, get jammed in them.
Yeah.
I turned down loading calls, mostly because I don't care what it paid. It wasn't worth getting hurt, only if I had to. And it was just a necessity that I be there when I load those trucks. And I was always in a position to assign people anyway,
Yeah, I think the only time, my time here running this room, I can only think of a few people that ever got like a couple stitches or something. Cut themselves on something or something, hit their head on something, So
Jack Young and Lupe Carmona took a bad fall. That's how.
Yeah, they did. That was a bad one. Yeah. Yeah, they're lucky they lived through that one.
They were lucky to live through that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one could have been the end.
Tragic.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's this business. It's the razor's edge a lot of times on when you're doing stuff because you're.
We were shooting the television series Crime Story, and they had a Falcon, a business air jet, and they were shooting it from. Nobody got hurt. I'm not going to go over there. Nobody got hurt. They were shooting it from the ground going by, and they had lights in it so you could see the windows. And John Sands and Dana Pearson were in the airplane with the lights making sure it was squared away, and the guy would fly into it was out by not by Valley of Fire, but Red Rock, and the camera guy'd say, you got to get a little lower, and the guy'd pull up out of the thing, and he'd bank her back around, and he'd come in, and he'd hit the thing a little bit lower, and nope, you got to do it another time, got to get a little bit lower. John Sands is scared to death. He goes up to the cockpit and he says, you guys aren't going to be happy till you kill us. He slams in it. And Dana's grabbing him and they're trying to fly him and get him out of here. Get him out of here. Anyway, they got the shot and they got out of it. But and that's just a story I heard after the fact because I wasn't there. But
Wow.
You guys not going to be happy till you slam us into this mountain. The crazy things that we get involved in, though,
Oh yeah.
I remember out at shooting the movie out in the Jean Dry Lake. It was Megaforce, and we had 3 regular Air Force C-130s. We had a B-25 chase plane for camera and a helicopter out there, and then we had 22 M48 National Guard tanks and all the service vehicles with that, the towers and with it. And we built these Arabian villages the carpenter in, and they're blowing everything up. They're blowing up 55-gallon drums, and they want to see how high they go, so they can keep them in frame. How much powder they want to use on these drums, and they had a big ammunition dump, and they launched one of these doom buggies that Needham had built for the movie into it, and it blows up and takes out the ammunition dump, and just crazy stuff, with tanks running around and these big airplanes, and they had a C-123, but there was close-ups for the motorcycles jumping out of the back because they're going to jump out, and of course it's all on the ground, and all the C-123 was no cockpit was torn off, and you had the ramp in the back, and you see the motorcycles coming out, the different things we set up, but just crazy shoots we do. What do you matter they paid the National Guard drivers of the tanks Teamster wages because the Teamsters insisted on it, and then Chris Caramano was catering it, and it was steak and lobster, the greatest catering you ever saw in your life. And one night, everything shut down for a while. You guys are stay here. We're having a big meal, and the tents were all set up, and these limos coming in, like 10 limos, and it's all these Japanese people who would put up the money to make that movie. They want to come in and see what's going on, and they're spending a lot of money, and they fed them all and fed us all, and they get them in their cars, take them back out to the airport, and send them home. Craziness, just craziness, you know what I'm saying? But really a lot of fun, so much fun doing that thing. Remember, we'd blow up those villages, then we go get enough of it together, we'd make up another village, and they'd blow that all up, And another one, good one about, I was shooting an F-15 out at Nellis Air Force Base, and we had dolly track set up in the F-15, and Jack Palance, it was his show, that he did this talk show thing.
I remember
things,
that,
and
yeah.
He walks around from the back of the F-15, and we had dolly track and a Fisher dolly set up, and Mike Long is pushing the dolly, and he's pulling it back, and he's making chalk marks where he's got to stop, and I said, Mike, maybe you got to stick a carabiner or a sandbag or a Mayfair or something on the back of that track so you don't roll off. He said, I know what I'm doing. I've got a chalk mark. Okay. So here comes Jack Palance walking, and he's pulling it back. Bap, it falls off the track, and that DP bangs his eye into the thing. And I'm like, oh my God, are you all right? But I didn't say anything. Mike turns to me, he says, if you tell anybody this, oh yeah, right, I'm not going to tell anybody this, Mike. Right, for sure. Anyway, I said, you okay? And the guy said, yeah, I'm okay. Put it back together. Just crazy things that happen. So anyway, another one, I'm tying in power because they're going to, Palance says it's the kill that's not a kill. These pilots are shooting each other down electronically out on the range, and everything feeds back here. And then when they come in, they'll debrief and go over what's going on out there. So we got this room full of big screens, television screens, and that they're going to look at everything. And I'm tying in power because you have to draw the power from the same place that they're shooting this. So you have to match. You get out of sequence, you get lines and things in there. You just have to match that power. So I'm tying into the power they're using. I was in the Air Force, so I've got these crank-on stay-cons that you put on, and I put my ground on, and I squeeze my neutral on, and then I put cardboard between them, putting the hot legs on, and I'm hanging the draping the tool off of the door to take the slack off, and I'm getting them plugged in. And this bird colonel comes up to me. He says, you know what you're doing? I said, I do this quite often. I'm sure I'm doing it right. And he said, everything that's going on out there on the range comes back here for the debriefing. And he said, it's literally cost the Air Force hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you got to know what you're doing. I said, well, I'll be very careful. I said, you aren't making me any it's more steady-handed here by telling me this. And it's a full bird colonel, and it's kind of cool. Just the things you get away with and the things you do. Got it in all worked out. Got our shots.
Yeah, that would have been interesting for you because, having been in the Air Force,
yeah.
you're going to think, oh, it's a full bird colonel.
I'll tell you
Your
what.
next step is general. So,
Yeah,
you know.
my buddy Don Tucker that I was telling you about earlier, his father was a lieutenant colonel, as was my brother when he finished up in the Michigan Guard. And my brother he'd done 7 years in the Marine Corps enlisted reserve, and then he loved the military, and he joined the Guard, and he went through the Michigan Military Academy to get his commission. And we're up at the camp, and I'm telling him, you know, my brother's up here. He's going through the academy. And he says, he's going through the academy? I said, yeah. He said, come with me, Al. We go to this tent, and it's General Mark Neefer, the base commander. It was a Colonel Crum, and it was his dad at the time was a major. Joe Tucker was a major. And they said, how you doing, guys? He introduced me to the guys, and you having fun, you know, going out fishing on Lake Marguerite there. And I said, yeah. He said, and Don did this just to tell him about my brother. He said, we're going to go over and visit Al's brother. He's in the military academy over there. And they all said, he's in the academy? And I said, yeah. They said, oh, what did he do? I said at the time he was an expediter for Air Cooperation. It was before State Farm. And I said, but he did 7 years in the Marine Corps and he likes the military. And they said, he's yours, Joe. Joe Tucker, my buddy Don's dad. And at that point, I realized how political the military is. It's as political as Washington is.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
It's who you know and where you go and how you do. And at that moment, it was a big realization to me, you know. But Dick earned everything he got. My brother's an amazing man.
Yeah. People don't realize it. My two brothers, they were in the Air Force also, and it's political, big time political. My brother John he's a captain, and he was I can't remember what they called him, but he was, General Barney Rawlings.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever they call the guys that take care of the generals and that's what he did here. And
when they introduced the F-117, the stealth fighter at Nellis, I'm looking in the paper and I told Craig Wells, you know, hey, the public gets in there at 2:00. We can go out and look at these things. You want to do it? And he said, yeah. And he called me about 3 hours later and he said, you know, my sister boyfriend is Jeff Silvers. He's Steve Wynn's lawyer. And he said, we go out there with him at 10 in the morning. He said, we can get right up close to the planes. I said, oh, yeah, let's do that. I was in shorts and a T-shirt. I can't believe I didn't get dressed up for this. And so is Craig. He's in shorts. And he would go out there in his BMW with his sister and Silvers. And we go into the officers club, and the lowest ranking officer is a full bird colonel, and I'm in shorts and a T-shirt. Like, I wish you'd told us about this before, but then we got to go inside. The crowd is 200 yards away. There's yellow tape, and they can get up about that close. We walk right under the tape. We're walking around the airplane. Here, who do I see but here? Barney Rawlings and his daughter. And I said, hey, Barney. He said, Al, how'd you get here? We did all these fights with them. He did the payroll for all the camera people and stuff like that. And I said, well, Craig's sister dates Steve Wynn's lawyer, and he got us in. We're walking around and we're talking. He said, what do you think, Al? I said, something else. Radar can't pick it up. I said, what do you think, Barney? He said, most constipated airplane I've ever seen in my life, Al. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, where's the exhaust? And I walk around and you can't see any exhaust. I said, yeah. He said, comes out the top of the tail as part of the stealth. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So we talked for a minute, and then we came out, and Jeff Silver says, who was that guy you were talking to? And I said, oh, it's General Rawlings. He said, a general? I said, he's a retired general. I said, he flew B-17s in Europe during the Second World War. And Barney told me some stories. He's telling me about coming back, shot up. B-17s are limping back and slamming into each other head on, just trying to get to the ground. And the propellers that were turning and chopping up pieces of body and just a terrible mess. And dogs, because there were so many dogs, because people had been bombed out and the dogs survived, but the people then running out and grabbing a piece of human flesh and running off. Barney could tell you some stories, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, here we go, wandering off again, telling stories.
That's okay. You know, that's all part of it, too. It's, yeah, that 117 was amazing.
Yeah.
And it just shocked a lot of people, but the B-2, when it rolled out, whew.
And SR-71, and now they got the SR-72 that almost does twice the speed.
Yeah, and it's that thing just looks mean.
If you're going out to one of the shows and walked around and gotten close to it, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You could get up and look in the cockpit. And, of course, I never miss an air show.
Yeah, I would imagine you would. Yeah.
One of my favorite planes was a P-38 Lightning, and I built models of it and did all kinds of things. And they had the one that they found up in Greenland and took it out of the ice. They call it Glacier or something like that. They named it, and they rebuilt it to its original condition and flew it in there. Just a beautiful airplane and so far ahead of its time. It's like the P-58 fighter that they built was so advanced that they couldn't train enough people to keep up with it, and it was faster than anything out there, and it was a bomber. Some of the things we do are quite interesting, but then the Skunk Works is a pretty amazing place.
Yeah,
you wonder what they got up there you can't see.
Yeah, that's the thing. What you're seeing is stuff that they've been working on for 30 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
It's like, and we get to see it, and it's already antiquated compared to stuff they are working on. But
I'm really curious about these laser weapons that they're building now.
yeah,
They say they can take out all these drones and take out missiles with them, and they're mounting some of them running in B-52s and pretty amazing thing. And Navy's using a lot of them there going on.
yeah. I think wasn't Gerald Ford equipped with just those? I mean, there's no Sea Whizzes. There might be some Sea Whizzes, but I think it's mainly just these laser things.
And then they've got those high-low mechanical machine guns that they'll send out a wall of lead or whatever there to knock down anything coming in. Pretty amazing.
Well, let's take a little break here, then we'll see what we're going to do after this one.
Yeah, I kind of wander off, and I'm not sticking with theater stuff.
It's all good. It's all good, man. All right, we'll take a little break here. You're listening to It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show.